The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and death. 3:17 a.m. The kind of hour when the world feels suspended between yesterday and tomorrow. When everything is quiet except the machines that keep people alive. Helmani's hand shot out, grabbed Minjay's wrist with strength that shouldn't exist in a dying woman. Her eyes locked on his. Jin was never just adopted. The monitor beeped. Regular. Mechanical. Counting down. He is your biological son, and your wife knows. Minjay froze. I watched it happen in slow motion. Watched his face process the words. Watched comprehension dawn like a sunrise you don't want to see. He turned to me. Slowly. Like he already knew what he was about to discover. How long have you known? My throat closed. My hands were shaking. 3 years of carrying this secret, and now it was out, and I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't speak, and I couldn't do anything except tell the truth. Since the day I found the file in her study. His face did something I'd never seen before. It didn't break. It didn't shatter. It just emptied, like someone had reached inside and pulled out everything that made him him. The monitor beeped faster. Helmani smiled, and I realized this was it. This was the moment everything I'd built for 3 years came crashing down. If you're feeling that same cold horror crawling up your spine right now, hit that subscribe button. Because what Helmani is about to confess will prove that this family was never ours. It was always hers. And she's been playing a game none of us even knew we were in. The day I found that file, I thought it was a mistake. A lab error. A clerical mix-up. Something explainable. It wasn't. It was 3 years ago. Part 3 of this nightmare. Back when I still thought I understood how this family worked. I'd gone to Helmani's estate to pick up some documents Minjay needed for a board meeting. She wasn't home. The house staff let me into her study. The file was sitting on her desk. Not hidden. Not locked away. Just sitting there like it was waiting for me. DNA analysis report. Confidential. I shouldn't have looked. I knew I shouldn't have looked. But I did. And there it was. Black and white. Scientific certainty printed on expensive letterhead. Probability of paternity, 99.97%. Minjay was Jin's biological father. Not the donor. Not some anonymous sperm bank contribution. Minjay, my husband. The man who'd spent 2 years believing Jin might not be his biologically. The man who'd chosen fatherhood anyway. The man who'd built an entire identity around being the dad, who chose his son regardless of DNA. That man was Jin's biological father. And someone had known. Someone had tested. Someone had this report and never said a word. I was still standing there, holding the file with shaking hands, when Helmani walked in. She didn't look surprised. Didn't look angry. Just looked at me like she'd been expecting this. Put it back, she said quietly. I did. My hands were trembling so badly I almost dropped it. Sit, she said. I sat. She poured tea like we were having a normal grandmother-daughter-in-law chat. Like I hadn't just discovered a secret that changed everything. You have a choice to make, she said. I couldn't speak. Couldn't process. Could only sit there while she explained. That report is real. Minjay is Jin's biological father. He always was. The fertility clinic didn't use donor sperm. Rin conceived naturally. And I've known from the beginning. Why? My voice cracked. Why didn't you tell him? Because he wasn't ready. Because biological obligation makes weak fathers. Because he needed to choose Jin first. Build a relationship based purely on decision. And then, maybe, learn the biology later. In that order. That's manipulation. That's protection. She sipped her tea. And now you know. Which means you have a choice. Tell him. Or protect what he's already built. He deserves to know. Does he? She cut me off. Does he deserve to know that his entire relationship with Jin was built on false information? That his beautiful choice was actually genetic obligation all along? That every speech he gave about adoption being real family was technically unnecessary because Jin was his by blood anyway? I opened my mouth. Closed it. Some truths protect families, Helmani said. Others destroy them. Decide which kind you want this to be. I decided it was the protecting kind. I was wrong. Back in the hospital room, Minjay was processing. He wasn't explosive. Wasn't yelling. That would have been easier. Yelling I could handle. Yelling meant emotion. Emotion meant engagement. Emotion meant we could fight and eventually make up. This was worse. This was him going quiet. Going internal. Retreating into that CEO space where he calculated and strategized and decided things without showing anyone what he was thinking. So my mother knew, he said finally. Yes. And you knew? Yes. For 3 years. Yes. He nodded, like he was checking off items on a list. Like this was a business transaction and not our marriage imploding. Did Seorin know? I looked at Helmani. She answered, yes. From the beginning. Before the pregnancy even happened. She knew. So everyone knew. Minjay's voice was so calm it was terrifying. Everyone knew Jian was my biological son except me. The person it actually affected. The person who had a right to that information. Everyone decided I couldn't be trusted with the truth about my own child. It wasn't about trust, I started. Then what was it about? He finally looked at me. Really looked at me. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like every woman in my life decided I was too weak or too stupid or too something to handle reality. So you all conspired to lie to me. For years. While I walked around thinking I was this enlightened adoptive father making noble choices. When actually, his voice cracked. Actually, I was just Jian's father. The normal, boring, biological way. And everyone knew except me. You're missing the point, Helmani said. Her voice was getting weaker. The machines were beeping irregularly now. The biology doesn't matter. What matters is you chose him first. That choice made you a better father than biology ever could have. You don't get to decide that. Minjay stood up. You don't get to manipulate my entire life and then tell me it was for my own good. You don't get to steal 3 years of truth and call it protection. Sit down. Helmani's voice had that command in it. That tone that made Korean sons obey their mothers, even when they were furious. There's more. And you need to hear it before I die. Which is going to be very soon. So sit. Down. He sat. She looked at both of us. Jian wasn't an accident. He wasn't uncertain. He was planned. By me. The room went very still. What? My voice was barely a whisper. Before Seorin conceived, Helmani said, I arranged everything. Minjay had fertility samples preserved. Military requirement in Korea. All men do it before service. Those samples were stored. Under my access. Under my control. What did you do? Minjay's voice was dangerous now. I ensured they were used. Ensured Seorin conceived with your genetic material. Ensured the Kong bloodline continued with certainty. Not hope. Not chance. Certainty. He couldn't finish the sentence. You engineered my son? I ensured succession. I ensured the company had a legitimate heir. I ensured this family survived another generation. That's what matriarchs do. We make hard decisions. We ensure survival. You played God. I was standing now too. You manipulated conception. You lied about donors. You let Seorin and Minjay think they were using a sperm bank when actually you were using his own genetic material without permission. That's not protection. That's violation. That's survival. Helmani closed her eyes. She looked so tired. So old. And there's more. 10 years ago, when G1 was targeted by Park Industries, that wasn't random. There was a board member. Inside Kongtech. Feeding information. Helping them. Working against this family. Who? Minjay demanded. Director Choi. He's been on the board for 15 years. He's been waiting. Watching. Looking for weaknesses. And 8 years ago, he found one. He suspected Jian's origin. He suspected manipulation. He's been quietly pushing for transparency audits. Genetic verification. Succession clarity. Waiting for me to weaken. Waiting for an opportunity to use the truth as a weapon. The machines beeped faster. More urgent. If the board discovers what I did, Helmani continued, they'll claim succession manipulation. They'll say Minjay misled shareholders. They'll have legal grounds to remove him, to take the company, to destroy everything we built. That's why I buried it. That's why I forced Ade to keep quiet when she discovered it. That's why this secret had to stay hidden. You were never meant to find that file, she said to me. I left it out by accident. I was tired. Dying, even then. Made a mistake. But when you found it and chose to keep quiet, I knew you'd protect this family. Even from the truth. Subscribe right now because this conspiracy goes deeper than anyone imagined. And the board member who's been waiting to destroy this family? He's making his move tonight. A nurse rushed in. Her vitals are dropping. You need to step out. No. Minjay moved closer to the bed. Not yet. Mother. If Director Choi knows, if he's been investigating, what's his next move? Helmani opened her eyes. She was fading. I could see it. This wasn't a woman with days left. This was a woman with hours. Maybe minutes. He's been waiting for me to die, she whispered. Waiting for the protection I provide to disappear. Waiting to strike when you're vulnerable, when you're grieving, when you're not thinking clearly. That's when he'll make his move. Emergency board meeting. Anonymous shareholder inquiry. Force you to address questions about succession. About legitimacy. About, she coughed. Blood flecked her lips. About whether Jian was really adopted, or if the whole thing was corporate theater to satisfy succession requirements. Is there evidence? I asked. Does he have proof? Fragments. Suspicions. Enough to raise questions. Not enough to prove manipulation. But in corporate warfare, questions are enough. Doubt is enough. He'll force you to provide documentation, medical records, genetic testing. And then, she was fading fast now. Then the truth comes out. Not as choice, as exposure, as scandal. And that destroys you. So what do we do? Minjay asked. You were never meant to find out this way. Helmani's voice was barely audible now. I wanted more time. Wanted to prepare you. Wanted to. The machines started screaming. Different beeps. Urgent beeps. Doctors rushed in. Code blue. Crash cart. All the dramatic medical emergency choreography you see on TV, but never want to see in real life. We were pushed into the hallway. Stood there, watching through the glass. They worked on her for 7 minutes. At 3:51 a.m., they called it. Helmani was dead. And she'd left us with a conspiracy, a traitor, and a secret that could destroy everything. Minjay slid down the wall. Just collapsed. Sat there with his head in his hands. 3 years, he said. You knew for 3 years. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't give me back the truth. Sorry doesn't undo the lie. Sorry doesn't, he stopped. Took a breath. Why didn't you tell me? Really? Not the rationalization. Not the excuse about protection. What? I sat down next to him. Right there on the hospital floor at 4 a.m. with his mother dead and our marriage dying. Because I was scared, I admitted. Scared the truth would change things. Scared you'd love him differently. Scared the board would use it against us. Scared of everything. And Helmani made it sound like keeping quiet was the brave choice. The protective choice. So I chose silence. And I was wrong. I'm sorry. You chose silence for 3 years. Yes. While I built an identity around being an adoptive father. Yes. While I gave speeches about choice versus biology. Yes. While I fought the board about legitimacy. Yes. He laughed. It was the saddest sound I'd ever heard. Every single thing I've done for the past 3 years was based on false information. Every choice. Every speech. Every identity I built. All of it based on a lie you and my mother decided I couldn't handle. Minjay, don't. He stood up. Don't explain. Don't justify. Don't do that thing where you make the lie sound noble. Just don't. I need to process this. Alone. Without you deciding what truth I can handle. He walked away. Down the hospital corridor. Toward the exit. Leaving me sitting on the floor next to the room where his mother had just died. And I understood something Helmani never taught me. Some truths don't protect families. They just expose how broken we already were. I went home. Not to the penthouse I shared with Minjay. To a hotel. Because I couldn't face our home. Couldn't face Neri. Couldn't face pretending everything was fine when my marriage had just shattered. At 6 a.m., my phone buzzed. News alert. Kongtech board calls emergency meeting. Anonymous shareholder files inquiry into succession documentation. CEO Minjay Kong facing questions air legitimacy. It was happening. Director Choi was making his move. Just like Helmani said he would. I called Minjay. He didn't answer. I called Rin. She did. Did you see the news? She asked. Yes. Where's Minjay? I don't know. He's not answering my calls either. But Ade, she paused. I need to tell you something. About that night. About conception. About what really happened. Helmani already told us. She used his preserved samples. No. I mean yes. But Rin was crying. I knew. She told me the plan before we even tried to conceive. She told me it would be Minjay's genetic material. She told me to never tell him. And I agreed. Because I was young and scared and she convinced me it was the only way to ensure succession. So I'm just as guilty. I've been lying for 8 years. And now it's destroying everything. Does Director Choi know about you knowing? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. If he's been investigating for years. She stopped. Oh God. The board meeting. They're going to ask me questions. Under oath. About conception. About donors. About whether I knew. And I can't lie. Not under legal questioning. Not when it could affect Jian's legitimacy. So what do we do? I don't know. But we need to find Minjay. We need to figure out how to handle this together before Director Choi frames the narrative for us. I hung up, got dressed, went looking for my husband, found him 3 hours later, at the office, in the executive suite, staring at legal documents. "The inquiry is formal," he said when I walked in. Didn't look up, just kept reading. "They're requiring genetic verification, family medical histories, conception documentation, everything that proves Jian is a legitimate heir according to corporate bylaws." What do the bylaws say? That heirs must be biological descendants of the founding family. Adoption is recognized, but requires board approval and genetic verification that no biological heirs exist, which we got 3 years ago when we adopted Jian. So we're covered. We're covered if Jian isn't my biological son. He finally looked up. But he is. Which means we lied in the adoption documentation. We claimed there were no biological heirs. But there was. Jian was already my biological child. We just didn't know it. Or his eyes were cold. You did know it. And you approved the adoption paperwork anyway. Which makes it fraud. My blood went cold. Fraud. Misrepresentation to the board. Misrepresentation to shareholders. Misrepresentation in legal succession documents. That's what Director Choi is going to claim. That's how he's going to try to remove me. But you didn't know. I didn't know. But you did. And Helmani did. And Seorin did. Which means the family knew. And if the family knew and lied anyway, that's conspiracy to commit corporate fraud. That's grounds for removal. That's grounds for criminal charges. They can't. They can. He pushed the documents toward me. Read it. Corporate bylaws. Section 47. Misrepresentation in succession documents is grounds for immediate removal of CEO and forfeiture of family voting rights. They can take everything. The position, the shares, the legacy, all of it. I read the documents. He was right. We were fucked. So what do? I asked. I don't know. He leaned back in his chair. But I've been thinking. About what my mother said. About Director Choi waiting for her to die. About him having fragments, but not proof. He paused. About how secrecy is the vulnerability. What do you mean? He's trying to force us to lie under oath. Trying to make us provide documentation we can't provide without exposing the truth. Trying to corner us into either committing perjury or admitting fraud. That's his strategy. Use our own secrets against us. So what if we remove the secret? What if we tell the truth before he can expose it? What if we control the narrative instead of letting him weaponize it? You want to go public? I stared at him. You want to tell the board that Helmani manipulated conception? That we found out Jian was your biological son and kept quiet? That we lied in adoption documents? That's corporate suicide. Maybe. He was thinking. I could see it. CEO mode activated. Or maybe it's the only way to survive. If Director Choi exposes it, we look guilty. We look like we were hiding something criminal. But if we expose it first, if we come clean before he can weaponize it, we control how the story is told. The board will still be furious. Let them be furious. Fury we can manage. Fury is emotion. Emotion can be redirected. But scandal? Scandal driven by our enemies? That destroys us. That we can't manage. He stood up, started pacing. We call an emergency press conference. Today, before the board meeting, we tell the truth. All of it. Helmani's manipulation. The conception engineering. Me not knowing. You finding out and keeping quiet. Seorin being complicit. All of it. We expose the whole conspiracy. Not as something we're ashamed of, but as something we're correcting. That's insane. That's survival. He stopped pacing. Looked at me. Helmani spent 5 years teaching us how to fight. How to turn disadvantages into strengths. How to control narratives. This is that lesson. We take the weapon Director Choi was going to use against us, and we disarm it by making it public on our terms. The stock will crash. Temporarily. Then it'll recover. Because we'll frame this as family transparency, corporate integrity, correction of past manipulations. We'll say Helmani acted alone. That when we discovered the truth, we're making it public. That we're correcting the record. That Jian's legitimacy is now documented and transparent. That's the narrative. What if it doesn't work? Then we lose everything anyway. He pulled out his phone, started making calls. But at least we lose fighting. On our terms. Not waiting for Director Choi to destroy us on his. And just like that, my husband made a choice. Transparency over secrecy. Truth over protection. Risk over safety. I didn't know if it was brave or suicidal, but it was honest. Finally, comment below if you think Minjay's plan is genius or disaster. Because what happened in the next 12 hours would determine if honesty really is the best policy, or if some secrets should stay buried forever. We had 6 hours before the board meeting. 6 hours to prepare a statement. Call a press conference. Tell our son that his whole origin story was about to become public knowledge. 6 hours to either save our family or destroy it completely. Seo Rin arrived at the office at noon. She'd been crying. Her makeup was smudged. Her hands were shaking. Are we really doing this? She asked. Yes, Minjay said. We're really doing this. Jian is going to find out. Everyone is going to know. His friends. His school. Everyone. He's going to find out anyway, I said. Better he hears it from us than from news headlines or board meeting leaks. Better we tell him the truth in a way he can understand than let him discover it in the worst possible way. What do we tell him? That was the question. What do you tell an 8-year-old about genetic manipulation and corporate conspiracy and lies that span his entire lifetime? We tell him the truth, Minjay said. Age-appropriate truth. But truth. We tell him. Helmani made some choices before he was born. Choices about how he came into the world. And those choices mean he's loved in multiple ways. He's chosen. And he's biological. Both things are true. Both things matter. And nothing about who he is changes. What if he asks why we didn't tell him before? We tell him the truth about that too. That we were scared. That we made mistakes. That adults sometimes get things wrong even when they're trying to protect the people they love. Seo Rin nodded. Still crying. I'm sorry, she said to Minjay. For lying. For knowing. For being part of this. I'm so sorry. I know. His voice was neutral. Not warm. Not cold. Just neutral. We'll deal with it. After we survive this. After we get through the board meeting and the press conference and the shareholder reaction. After all that, we'll deal with the personal stuff. But right now, we need to be united. We need to present a united family front. Can you do that? Yes. Good. He looked at his watch. Press conference is at 2 p.m. Board meeting is at 4 p.m. We have 2 hours to write a statement and get ready to face the cameras. What about Jian? I asked. We tell him now. Together. At Seo Rin's apartment. Before the press conference. He deserves to hear it from us first. We drove to Seo Rin's apartment in silence. Jian was in his room, playing with Lego dinosaurs. Being 8. Being innocent. Being everything we were about to disrupt. Bug, Minjay said from the doorway. Can we talk to you? Jian looked up. Saw all 3 of us. Serious faces. Serious energy. Am I in trouble? No, you're not in trouble. But we need to tell you something important. We sat on the floor with him. All 3 adults surrounding one small boy with his Lego and his innocence and his whole life ahead of him. You know how you were adopted? Minjay started. Yeah. And you know how sometimes adoption means the child and the parent aren't related by biology? Yeah. You chose me. That's what makes us family. That's right. I chose you. And that choice is real and important, and it made us father and son. Minjay took a breath. But we also found out something else. Something we didn't know when you were born. We found out that I'm also your biological father. That you came from me. Genetically. By blood. Jian looked confused. But I thought the donor. There was no donor. We thought there was. But there wasn't. It was always me. We just didn't know. Why didn't you know? Because Helmani, your great-grandmother, she made some choices when you were born. Choices about how to help you come into the world. And those choices meant you were always mine. Biologically. We just didn't find out until later. Jian processed this. His little face serious. Thinking. So I'm adopted and biological? Yes. Both. Both things are true. Is that bad? No, Bug. That's not bad. That's just complicated. But it means you're loved in multiple ways. You're chosen. And you're mine by blood. Both. Why are you telling me now? And there it was. The hard question. Because, I said, other people are going to find out. It's going to be in the news. People are going to talk about it. And we wanted you to hear it from us first. So you understand. So you're not confused or scared when you hear other people talking about it. Are people going to be mean about it? God. The wisdom of children. Some people might be, Seo Rin said. Some people might say confusing things or ask weird questions. But the truth is simple. You're loved. You're wanted. You're part of this family in every way that matters. And nothing anyone says changes that. Jian was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "So nothing changes?" Minjay's voice cracked. "Nothing changes." "Okay." Jian went back to his dinosaurs. "Can I keep playing now?" "Yeah, Bug. You can keep playing." We stood up, walked out of his room, stood in the hallway. "That went better than expected," Rin said. "He's going to have more questions later," Minjay said. "When his friends talk. When he sees the news. When he realizes how big this is. But for now, he's okay." "That's enough." We drove back to Kong Tech headquarters. The press was already gathering. News vans, cameras, reporters. Director Choi's plan to force a scandal was working. The media smelled blood. They were circling, but they didn't know we were about to feed them a different story. At 2 p.m., we walked into the press conference room. 50 reporters, 20 cameras, enough media coverage to reach every corner of Korea and beyond. Minjay stepped to the podium. "Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. I have a statement to make about my family, about succession at Kongtech, and about setting the record straight on some events from 8 years ago." The room went silent. 8 years ago, my son Jin was born. At the time, his mother and I believed he was conceived using donor sperm through a fertility clinic. We believed I might not be his biological father. 3 years ago, we adopted him, made it official, legal, permanent. He paused. What I didn't know until very recently, was that Jin was always my biological son. There was no donor. He was conceived naturally. And the reason we didn't know this is because my late mother, Kong Helmani, arranged it that way. The reporters erupted. Questions shouted. Cameras flashing. Minjay held up a hand. "Before Jin was conceived, my mother accessed fertility samples I had preserved during military service. She arranged for those samples to be used without my knowledge. She wanted to ensure succession, ensure the Kong bloodline continued. And she succeeded. Jin is my biological son. He always was." More questions. More chaos. 3 years ago, my wife Ade discovered this truth. She found documentation in my mother's study. Documentation that proved Jin's biological origin. And she made the difficult choice to keep that information private. Not to deceive, but to protect the relationship I'd already built with my son. To protect a bond that was based on choice rather than obligation. He looked directly at the cameras. "I'm making this statement today for 3 reasons. First, transparency. The truth is now public. Second, correction. The adoption paperwork filed 3 years ago was based on incomplete information. We believed Jin was not my biological child. We now know that was incorrect. That documentation is being corrected and refiled. Third, clarity. Jin is my son. Legally through adoption. Biologically through genetics. Emotionally through 8 years of being his father. All 3 things are true. All 3 things matter. And his legitimacy as an heir to this family and this company is absolute." The questions came like weapons. "Did you knowingly file false adoption documents?" "No. I did not know Jin was my biological son when we filed adoption paperwork. I learned the truth 2 days ago." "Did your wife know?" "Yes. She discovered the truth 3 years ago. She chose to keep it private. That was her choice. I'm not here to defend or condemn that choice. I'm here to correct the public record." "Is this related to the board inquiry?" "There is a board member who has been investigating succession for several years. He suspected something irregular." He was right. There was something irregular. My mother manipulated conception without my knowledge or consent. That was wrong. I'm making it public now, so there's no question. No doubt. No weapon he can use against this family. Are you accusing a board member of? I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm stating facts. There is an investigation. There are questions. I'm answering them. Publicly. Transparently. That's all. The press conference lasted 45 minutes. 45 minutes of brutal questions and honest answers. When it was over, Minjay stepped away from the podium. Looked at me. Now we faced the board. The board meeting was in the main conference room. 20 board members. Director Choi sitting in the second row. Smiling slightly. He'd wanted a scandal. Wanted to force us into exposure. Wanted to weaponize our secrets. We'd beaten him to it by 2 hours. "Mr. Kong," the board chairman said, "we've all seen your press conference. And we have questions." "I'm sure you do," Minjay said. "Ask them. Did your mother really manipulate your son's conception without your knowledge?" "Yes." "Did your wife really know for 3 years and not tell you?" "Yes." Did you really file adoption paperwork claiming there were no biological heirs when there was? Yes, because I didn't know. I filed that paperwork in good faith based on information I had at the time. Information that was incorrect. But my intention was honest. Intention doesn't matter in legal documentation. Then let's talk about legality. Minjay pulled out documents. This is corrected documentation, genetic testing, updated succession paperwork, legal confirmation that Jian is my biological son and legitimate heir. Filed this morning. Approved by our legal team. Submitted to the board for review. Everything is now correct and transparent. Director Choi stood up. This doesn't change the fact that your family misled this board for 3 years. That's grounds for removal. I didn't mislead anyone. I didn't know. My mother misled me. My wife chose to keep quiet about information she discovered. But I personally did not engage in deception. I was the one being deceived. Your wife knew. My wife is not the CEO. Her knowledge doesn't reflect on my leadership. Her choices were hers. My choices were mine. And my choices have always been made in good faith with the information I had. This is semantics. This is facts. Minjay's voice was steel. You wanted an investigation? You got one. You wanted transparency? You got it. You wanted questions answered? They're answered. Now tell me, what exactly are you accusing me of? What crime? What violation? What grounds for removal? The room was silent. Director Choi sat down. Because Minjay was right. By going public first, by telling the truth before it could be weaponized, by separating his actions from his mother's and his wife's, he'd remove the ammunition. The board chairman cleared his throat. The board will review the new documentation. We'll vote on whether this constitutes grounds for any action. But Mr. Kong, he paused. I have to say, this is the most transparent succession clarification I've seen in 30 years of corporate governance. Most CEOs would have buried this, hidden it, fought it. You chose honesty. That matters. The vote happened 3 days later. 17-3 in favor of Minjay retaining his position. Director Choi and 2 allies voted for removal. Everyone else voted to accept the corrected documentation and move forward. We'd survived. Barely, but survived. If you've made it this far, if you've been with this family through 5 parts of lies and manipulation and corporate warfare, drop a comment saying family. Because that's what this is about. Messy, complicated, imperfect families trying to survive truth. The stock dropped 12% in 3 days. Then recovered 8%. Then stabilized. Shareholders were confused, but ultimately accepted the explanation. CEO being deceived by his mother was believable. CEO trying to correct historical manipulation was acceptable. The media had a field day for a week, then moved on to other scandals. But the real damage wasn't public. It was private. 3 weeks after the press conference, Minjay and I were still sleeping in separate rooms. Still married legally. Still living in the same penthouse. Still co-parenting Neri. But separate. He wasn't angry anymore. Anger would have been easier. Anger burns hot and eventually burns out. This was worse. This was distance. This was him being polite. Professional. Co-parenting partners who happened to share a home. We need to talk, I said one night after Neri was asleep. Okay. We sat in the living room. Why neither of us was drinking. Same script, different crisis. Are we getting divorced? I asked. He was quiet for a long time. I don't know, he said finally. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if love without trust is enough to build a marriage on. Do you still love me? Yes. He said it immediately, without hesitation. I still love you. But love isn't enough. Love doesn't fix broken trust. Love doesn't give me back 3 years of truth. Love doesn't, he stopped. Love just makes it hurt more. So what do? We try therapy. We try time. We try seeing if trust can rebuild. But I can't promise it works. I can't promise I forgive you. I can't promise we make it. That's fair. Is it? He looked at me. Because it doesn't feel fair. It feels like I'm punishing you for something you did out of fear. For something you did because my mother manipulated you. For something you did trying to protect what we'd built. And I know all that. I understand all that. But understanding doesn't make it hurt less. I'm sorry. I know. You've said that. And I believe you. But sorry doesn't fix this. Time might. Therapy might. Consistent honesty might. But sorry alone? That's not enough. We sat in silence. Then he said, my mother called this love. Called her manipulation protection. Called her lies necessary. And maybe they were. Maybe we wouldn't have survived without her orchestrating everything. But I don't want to live like that anymore. I don't want to be the person who accepts lies as protection. I don't want to raise Jian and Neri thinking deception is love. So if we're going to make this work, if we're going to rebuild, it has to be on absolute honesty. No more secrets. No more protection through deception. Just truth. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I can do that. Can you? He looked at me. Because for 3 years you couldn't. For 3 years you chose protection over truth. What's different now? Now I've seen what lies cost. Now I've watched our marriage almost break. Now I've realized that protection without truth is just control. And I don't want to control you. I don't want to decide what truth you can handle. I want to be your partner. Your equal. Not your protector. He nodded slowly. Okay. Then we try. We go to therapy. We work on trust. We see if this marriage can survive honesty. And if it can't, if the damage is too deep, we figure out how to love each other from a distance. How to co-parent. How to be family without being married. But we try first. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm not doing you a favor. I'm trying to save something I don't want to lose. But I don't know if it's salvageable. That's the truth. The honest, brutal truth. I don't know if we make it. I didn't know either. But at least we were finally being honest. 6 months later, we're still trying. Still in therapy. Still rebuilding trust one conversation at a time. Still married. Still sleeping in separate rooms, but now occasionally sleeping in the same room. Still loving each other. Still not quite trusting each other. Still working on it. Jian adjusted better than expected. Kids are resilient. He understands he's loved. Chosen. Biological. All of it. And he's okay. Neri is too now. Walking. Talking. Starting to understand family dynamics in the way toddlers do. Seo-rin and I have an awkward alliance. We both lied to Minjay. We both did it from fear. We both understand each other's choices even if we don't agree with them. Director Choi resigned from the board 3 months after the vote. Quiet resignation. No scandal. Just gone. His plan failed. His weapon was disarmed. And he had nothing left. Helmani was right about one thing. Transparency neutralized the threat. By telling the truth before it could be weaponized, we removed its power. But she was wrong about another thing. Protection through lies doesn't build strong families. It builds families dependent on secrets. And when those secrets break, and they always break, the family breaks too. We're rebuilding. Not on lies. On truth. On honesty that's uncomfortable and difficult, and sometimes painful. And I don't know if we make it. I don't know if Minjay fully forgives me. I don't know if trust comes all the way back. But I know we're trying. And maybe trying is enough. Maybe trying is what family is. Not perfection. Not protection. Just people who love each other trying to figure out how to be honest. How to be real. How to survive truth. That's not a fairy tale. That's not a neat ending. That's just life. Messy. Complicated. Real. And real is what we need. Hit that subscribe button because part 7 is coming. And it's the one where Jian makes a choice about his future that will shock everyone. Where Neri faces her first experience with racism. Where Minjay and I finally answer the question. Can love survive without trust? Or do we love each other enough to let go? The Kong family story isn't over. It's just getting real. Finally, see you in part 7.